During the COVID period, this issue happened where African regulators were quickly clearing the way for some of these vaccine candidates to be made available, clearing way, providing regulatory path for their usage. As compared to how the process usually take when it's not a pandemic situation, there seems to be accelerated procedure, and there were a lot of concerns, especially with the public, on two way ground, which is, to what extent did we ascertain that this agent could actually be used, and why are we not deploying similarly fast channels for our locally unique agents that would help our community? So how do you balance the speed that was exercised by the regulators during the COVID with the complaint that people usually have about the regulatory process? And I think you highlighted the thoroughness of the regulatory process in the previous thing. So balancing the speed that is available, that is actually possible, and the slow pace compared to regulatory processes conventional.
Yeah, that's a good question, but that speed could kill. I'm talking of literally kill the regulator. It is not usual thing to experience. First, something actually gave in most regulatory agencies. Quality of life for workers gave, because in Nigeria we tested all vaccines that came into the country, while still fighting those that are now filtering through the borders, because we didn't have inspectors. They couldn't go out to inspect. People were locked up in their different offices or wherever. But it's not a normal scenario to sustain. But we also learned lessons at that point, that you can adjust if there is an emergency to still get to point A or point B or whatever. But like I said, it's with a cost. It's at a cost, rather. But nonetheless, we were traveling for imported material, medicines. We have to travel to inspect. We have to travel overseas to inspect. But we couldn't travel. So you can see how it's not compromising something given. We are giving something up because we couldn't travel. So we were actually approving without inspecting the site because we couldn't go there. So for about 2 years, we couldn't. So that is why you think that, they're going at a speed. But we have given up a significant part of our regulatory. We were doing desk review. Few regulatory agencies did virtual. But we found out that for some aspect, maybe food or something, it is easier. For medicine, it's more difficult to do virtual. But few did virtual. So you can see what was given, what we gave up to make up. For local, we couldn't inspect also. So we had relatively more time to focus on getting the pandemic products out. So desk review, it was later that we started going to inspect companies that we should have inspected 2 years before. So that then compounded our work after the pandemic, because now you have more companies to inspect. So I hope you got it, that something gave in the process.
Looking back, how do you think things can be done much better, reflecting on the rapid nature of that, to still ensure that the public's confidence in the regulator remains unshaken despite the uniqueness of the situation? So let's reflect back on that period.
Yeah, tools. When I talk about good regulatory practices, you need tools. First of all, competence, training. If there is anything that Africa needs the most, is training in different aspects of regulation. The scientific, raw science-based regulation. That we are doing better than before. And I'm talking of now Africa, not just Nigeria. Technology. We are now training ourselves or being trained on the use of AI. We have very, very sharp techies. I will call them techies in Nigeria that love technology, computing technology or data science. So now we are training our staff in terms of use of AI. There's no choice. We do not have choice when it comes to AI in product approval. What may take 6 months in a couple of years may be taking 1 month because of AI that we are now building into our review process, our drug approval process. We now have, we are working actively as we speak on look-alike, sound-alike in terms of what people, the information they include in their dossier. We are looking at words or phrases or titles that are supposed to be there that are not there, that machine learning will bring out quickly, so that whichever dossiers that need not to be progressed for a particular the review cycle can easily be removed, so that you can now concentrate on the ones that are complete and approve them quickly, instead of spending so much time looking at a product that may not be approved. So technology is very important. AI especially for clinical trial, for pharmacovigilance, safety monitoring. There are some embedded practices that machine learning can bring out that will make the repetition of such a process or safety monitoring make it faster. So there are a lot of technology that we are now embedding, AI-based technology.
So I'm questioning, what is the NAFDAC's and Nigerian government's position on African Medicines Agency? Because Nigeria is one of the African countries still holding back. If you look at from what we've been talking about, borders, porosity is a key issue that is flaming the fire of unregulated drugs into the market. And I think the initiative, the brain behind the Medicines Agency, is to bring African countries together under a single umbrella, so that those that are not as advanced as Nigeria would be able to leverage on strong partnerships to reinforce drug security and safety on the continent. But Nigeria is one of the few countries holding back. So what is happening?
It's good that some countries are holding back, because you cannot just jump into the boat at the same time without asking questions. Can this boat take us? Do we have enough fuel in this boat to take us from point A to B? So it's good in a way that some countries are holding back, meaning we are not just doing it because we are Africans. We are doing it because we want it to become a legacy project. And if it's going to be a legacy project, there must be questions asked, just to be sure that people are aware of what may be potential problems in the future. NAFDAC has endorsed, Nigeria, I'll take that back. Nigeria is a national thing, but of course it's a AMA or AMA is an agglomeration of the 5 regulatory agencies in the world, but it is a national thing. Nigeria has endorsed AMA about 3 months ago, 3 or 4 months ago, but there's a process, what is called process of ratification. That is where we are right now. It is the process of ratification. We end up in the deposit of articles of ratification. That is where Nigeria is going right now. We asked some questions, and it was to the cabinet level, and the cabinet said we need clarity before we stick our neck into this union thing. And I don't blame Nigeria for doing that at all, but there are some things that you may not be able to change until you are part of it. So we are joining rather, we have not finished the process, so that whatever was not done well in creating the treaty can be changed later for good, not for the advantage of Nigeria. We don't need to join AMA to survive, but we should join AMA just for what you said, to spread the competency, to rely on each other, to collaborate with each other, to ensure that product that is found in Burkina Faso is as good as the same product found in South Africa. Why I'm saying that we don't need to join is because Nigeria, a regulatory agency, must be strong first before you join, especially the big ones like Nigeria. We've got to be very strong, because if you have African Medicine Agency where 90% are not strong, it will collapse. It's a matter of time. And our strength is based on WHO pre-qualification, global benchmarking. WHO global benchmarking. The ranking of regulatory agencies is 1 to 4. Then the new ranking is now WLA, WHO listed authority. It is to make sure that the regulatory agency is strengthened. The framework is very strong. If you have 10, 12 or 15 that are strong out of even 55 to begin with, the survival the probability of survival is very high compared to having one or two that have the maturity level 4 or whatever. So we have about 8 countries now with maturity level 3. We started from level 0. NAFDAC started from level 0 and now we are at level 3. We are going to 4 and WLA. If 15 countries get to maturity level 4, AMA will become stronger. But that is not why we have not joined. It was because we needed to get some questions asked. And now that some of the questions are asked or some of the questions are not yet asked, we've thought it timely to endorse. The country has endorsed and is going through ratification right now.
What were the questions that Nigeria was seeking clarification on?
One of the questions that Nigeria was seeking clarification on is the treaty. Is this treaty binding? If AMA says this medicine must be used, can Nigeria say no? If Nigeria cannot say no, we are the biggest. If it's going to adversely affect us, there's going to be a problem. That was one of the key questions that was asked. And I believe the authors of the treaty realized later that strong words should not be used. Strong is a word like binding should not be used. It is when AMA is now formed, we now have the DG that is starting in a month or 2 months, and the governing board is in place. That is when we can now talk about is it binding or not binding. How that NEPAD or AU now realizes that we just want everybody to have quality medicine and we want everybody to be part of this treaty. So it's not like binding, but at least it's still on paper. But I believe that that may be modified later. So that is one of the big questions.
There's also an issue that I've seen NAFDAC actively involved in, which is actively taking on the perpetrators of adulteration of fake drugs in Nigeria. I know what you did in the big markets. NAFDAC had to lobby for it to be closed for a couple of days, and the pushbacks. So from an organizational perspective, when you have intentions to ensure that fake drugs are gotten rid of, and there are still severe and strong pushbacks to the organization, does it affect the morale of your team members? And how do you get the necessary support to still achieve your set goals in keeping Nigeria safe?
Thank you so much. The pushback is expected because it's a trillion naira business, multi-trillion naira business, which is adulteration of medicines. So the pushback was expected, but in terms of morale, it's actually it has not affected our morale at all. First, because we don't have a choice. Our people deserve to get medicines that will make them well. So the vision is very, very clear. Challenges, which is the pushback. Some of our staff were kidnapped because of that. Litigation here, litigation there. But at the end of the day, you say, why are we doing this? And the answer is clear: to ensure that the medicine that people take are the medicines they're supposed to take, that will make them well, that we decrease mortality by ensuring that the medicines are of quality, they are safe, and they're efficacious. Support. We have gotten support from the government, National Security Advisor. They provided us 1,350 forces that worked with us for about 2.5 months in the 3 markets, and also during the destruction of what were the products that were evacuated. So from that perspective, we have gotten support. But I wish the government will also realize that the agency needs more support, because it is money that you use to do enforcement. The 1,350 forces, military, police, DSS, that fought with us, the agency had to maintain them, had to give stipend for 2.5 months or 3 months, because those forces were in the market. The force, they're not going to get money from their salary to start buying food or buying water or were fueling their vehicles. We had to do that. But the government may be realizing that now, that to do enforcement, you need a lot of money. The special raid that we did is the peak of what we do every time. If we hear by intelligence or know through our survey that a product coming from a manufacturer is not good, we have to go there. We have regulatory inspection that we do, and I will talk about the local one. We categorize our companies into three, about 180 of them: low risk, medium risk, high risk. And the risk is based on compliance with good manufacturing practice. The standards are UNIDO, WHO. It's a global standard. We are not creating our own standard in Nigeria. To do all this, we have to go and inspect. If a company is high risk, we have to go every 6 months. If it is medium risk, we go every year. If it is low risk, we go every 2 years. Whatever the case, you need vehicles, you need staff, you need computers, you need laboratory equipment. So it is something that some governments don't, especially in Africa. Our governments in Africa still don't understand in general, but I believe Nigeria may be understanding it slowly, but at least we are getting somewhere.
You were first appointed by President Buhari, and he reappointed you again. How would you describe your experience working with him and during his regime, and how has that translated into the new administration? You've transcended, you've worked with two different administrations now. So how does that handshake in terms of transferring from one administration to another worked out for you and your team members?
Well, President Buhari was a man that understands quality. If he knows that you are very good, he can leave everything for you to do. If he knows you are not very good, he will keep away. I'm fortunate that he chose me as the head of NAFDAC in 2017. He resisted untold pressures that will have put the wrong peg in the right hole, or the right peg in the wrong hole, or whatever, But he resisted pressure, and he's a man of few words, so to say. He was a man of few words. When it came to renewal of my term, which was 2022, there was flurry of pressures. Flurry. People that want to be DG NAFDAC. He saw what was achieved. Again, he resisted. And this one is even stronger than the previous form before I was appointed. Because when an agency like NAFDAC came from red, financially red, to black, meaning I paid the debt, 3.7 billion that I inherited when Naira was still good, and now we are black. People think it's time to steal money. So that's why I said flurry of wannabe DJs, but he resisted. However, with the new administration, being from the same political party, people could say, oh yes, it's supposed to continue. If it's a different party, they may say, oh, why don't you change? But usually a position like DG NAFDAC is not changed based on change in administration. But like the pressures that I was talking about, the new administration, people will have been going to him, we want to change this, we want a piece of the pie, so to say. And President Tinubu is somebody that can think through. He understands how things can work and who may be there to make things work. And he also learned from what has been achieved over the previous 5 years or 6 years before he took a decision to continue with me. So I can say that we are fortunate that the two presidents resisted pressure. So that's it. In terms of working with two administrations.
This is in any way impacting or whether NAFDAC's grant applications is directly or indirectly affected by what is happening in the global landscape?
Yes, NAFDAC was being indirectly affected, but not to the extent to which one will expect. We have USAID that was working in the country that got shut down, but right from the word go, I'm a big believer in self-sufficiency. Does that mean you cannot depend or you shouldn't depend or collaborate? I don't like the word depend. It's collaborate. There's no way that there will not be collaboration at one point or the other. But we as a country, became addicted to donations from development partners. And the development partners have good intentions. But if one became addicted, then it will be difficult to get off. or when there's a change, it will be too difficult to get off, like the change we are observing about nationalism and so on. But in NAFDAC, we have been also fortunate. There's what is called good reliance practice. You have to have good regulatory practice, but you have to show good reliance practice. We've been fortunate to have great reliance with development partners, but it's not necessarily tied, not in all cases, it's not necessarily tied to money, technical support, training, things like that. But a development partner like Gates Foundation has helped NAFDAC a lot. I believe they saw that accountability is built into our own quality management system. We started a quality management system, and accountability is key to it. Global Fund has supported us, but now with the cycle that we are ending now, it may not be as much money. Global Fund supported us with GS1 training, for example, and they are still supporting. But we have felt that pinch in a way that, it may not be as much. But if one is fiduciary responsible, if an agency is accountable, then the change will not impact too much. It will still impact, but the bottom line is that we are continuing with the relationship we have with Gates, with Global Fund, but the funding may not be as much. And that is part of what we have told ourselves at the union, at the African Union level. You are getting this grant. How sustainable is it? What are you going to put in place to have it sustainable? And that is when we know that addiction is bad. You cannot just be addicted and think that somebody will keep giving you money. The way I look at it is it should have a negative slope. It started at a higher level and started decreasing the amount of support. Meaning at point X, the support may be minimal. But while you are doing that, you are already building your own self-sufficiency in terms of accountability, in terms of making sure that money doesn't ooze out, stemming corruption, stemming transactional corruption in the agency. That is the way to make sure that there will be some money left that you can use for ABC.
How do you hope to leave NAFDAC? We know even several years after her death, we still continue to talk about the late Professor Dora Akinyele, and we've seen a lot of changes. And of course, you also are passionate about making significant impact in the role. So when Professor Adeyeye leaves this role, what do you hope to be remembered for?
For made in Nigeria products, whether food or drug, to be sold all over the world. That comes with quality. That comes with safety of such medicines or food. That comes with efficacy of the medicine. If those three attributes, quality, safety, efficacy, are maintained, it's a reflection of the strength of the regulatory agency. It's a reflection of where we started from, level 0 to, by God's grace, WLA. When you have to have WLA, your product that you approve after that time can be sold anywhere. That is higher GDP for Nigeria, less unemployment. But the bottom line is safety, is good, healthier population because their products, the medicine they take are good, are of quality rather, they are safe and they're efficacious. That is what all I want people to remember. See our export of our products within the continent, outside the continent. That is what I would call success.
What do you still think NAFDAC still needs to improve its efficiency?
We need a lot of staff to improve our efficiency. We need to get the open drug market under control. The open drug market predated me. I left the country in 1980. There were not open markets like we had patent medicine dealers, but we lost it as a country when we started giving patent medicine license or whatever to Dick and Harry. It became a cancer in Nigeria. The open drug market is unique to Nigeria especially, but there was a presidential order to contain them, to move them to what is called coordinated wholesale centers, where you have pharmacists. There will be a superintendent pharmacist and pharmacists representing maybe 5 shop owners or whatever. There will be NAFDAC in that drug mall. There will be Pharmacy Council of Nigeria. Pharmacy Council of Nigeria is responsible for site and practice, and the practitioner rather. And there will be police station there. We already have one in Kano. Out of the 4 major ones, the Kano one is open now. So we cannot wipe out open drug market, but we can contain them in the coordinated wholesale centers. We had to force the ones in Kano, Sabongeri market and whatnot. We forced them. They didn't want to move because they didn't want to be controlled. Now they are in the coordinated wholesale centers. We are even there. We are improving our post-marketing surveillance. It is easier when they are in the mall. It's a mall, a big mall. So once we contain them, then it will be easier to mitigate substandard falsified medicine, to stem down bad medicines from our market. But again, that needs a lot of work, a lot of support from the government.
When you talk about this open market, do you still think there is a space, a role for the open market in the present day Nigeria? Or do you think the need for it is no longer there? And when you talk about regulation, what kinds of laws or what kinds of interventions do you still need to achieve that?
I think open market, I don't want to call it open market, coordinated wholesale centers. We need it in Nigeria. First of all, most of our doctors leave the country. Most of our professionals leave the country. We have a default. It's a bad something because pharmacists can prescribe. People go to pharmacists more than they go to doctors because there are few of them. So there is room for the open market, but they have to be contained. They have to be professional in whatever they are doing. We need to also train them very well and enforce. Like what we did in the 3 markets, we evacuated over 137 40-foot containers of medicines and burned them. So once they are contained, fine. And that is where we are working towards. The one in Kano is there now. Lagos open market, coordinated wholesale center is being built as we speak. The one for Onitsha has been, I think the ground has been broken. The only one that is left that is not yet started is Aba market. So to answer your question, yes, there's room, but it has to be contained. We have law that is backing us. It's called the C-34. It is to mitigate unwholesome food and also mitigate falsified substandard medicines. It is a big law that created federal task force. The federal task force is domiciled in NAFDAC. The director of investigation and enforcement is also the chair of the federal task force, which is in Lagos. Under the federal task force, you have the state task forces, 36+2 state task forces. And we work with military, members of the federal task force, military, DSS, police, NDLEA, and those are the ones that should be operating at the state level. But for one reason or the other, the state level task forces were not working because the state has to also contribute in terms of the funding, which is part of the problem. But as in fact, the federal task force was supposed to be launched this month or relaunched by the Minister of Health, Professor Pate. So we are looking at within the next 2 weeks or so to relaunch. It was never launched during its time. So it's not like we are launching it after, it has never been launched in quote. But the arrangement that is taking place now has made it easier because at the state level, the director of pharmaceutical services under the Commissioner of Health is supposed to be overseeing the state task forces. But NAFDAC and PCN that are supposed to be tightly joined in a way were not close before. It was when the PCN bill was approved the last year of Buhari that we can now work closely because now NAFDAC is part of the PCN Council. NAFDAC was not part of the PCN Council before. So there was no commonality in terms of interaction, making the state task forces to work very well. But now that bill has been gazetted, that's led to this new relaunching that we are talking about. So the C-34 bill, that's what it's called, is the one that is backing us up.
I've been following your career a lot, and there are so many interesting phases in your journey that I always have questions and curious about in reflection. I'm not sure, but there is one that I think as we wrap up is you started your journey as a pharmacist at the University College Hospital Ibadan. So at what point? Because personally, I also started my professional career in the UCH Ibadan. At what point did you feel like this is not that because I knew you'd now transitioned straight away into academics and research. So what happened? Did you feel like routine everyday pharmacy work is not for you, or what was the transition like for you?
I'm too restless, very restless, a human being. A routine kills me. Boredom can kill me. And I saw boredom. I lived with boredom for about 4 years as a pharmacist practicing in the hospital. So I knew that, and there are many pharmacists that can do that 24. It is just that we are different in the way our own comportment is. So I just felt very restless at UCH. It is the same medicine, the same set of people that you're going to see. And I just felt very bored. I needed to be asking questions. Why? How can we solve this problem? How can we solve that problem? So I was fortunate to be given opportunity to see what I could do. I think my second to the last year at Nsukka, when I got an externship at Sterling Winthrop in Adepoju decades ago. And I saw that I felt more comfortable in the lab. We were posted to warehouse, to office, to the floor, manufacturing floor. It was when I got to the lab that I started feeling excited. So that gave me a window that this may be what I may do in the future. So that was where I knew that graduate school may be where I can start asking questions and hopefully providing it to my supervisors. And teaching. I also love teaching because the impact that a teacher can have on a student is lifelong impact if that teacher does it well. So I felt very comfortable with teaching. It's a disciplined life. In the US, you're not that well paid, but you get satisfaction from seeing your students graduating and seeing them doing very well. You meet them in the industry, at their practice sites. That's, to me, is very rewarding. So but it was from UCH that I knew that I have to change and start, and fit into the mold that I believe God has created for me.
I'm happy you also talked about God, because there's this also initiative that you're involved with that I'm curious about, which is the drugs for AIDS and HIV patients, which is faith-based. If you look at the way the HIV control has evolved over the generations and over the years, we've seen rapid growth in terms of the quality of life, in terms of the quality of the drugs, and advocacy has significantly improved, and prevention tools continue to explode. I remember, I think just this week, it's still this week, they had announced the 2-dose injection for long-acting drugs. So, but it's expensive, and we are hoping this continues to become much cheaper. How do you navigate from a person of faith and the uniqueness of the people affected most with HIV, which are the key populations? So for you, how do you navigate the religious perception, the ethical dilemmas, and the reality of helping this group to actually cross the last mile in fighting HIV?
Yes, that is part of what I mentioned earlier about asking questions. As a professor, I was developing medicines, getting patents for them, and when it came to HIV/AIDS drugs, it was getting almost like impossible in the US. And I said, why is this medicine the active ingredient so costly, so difficult to get? That was the height of the pandemic of HIV/AIDS, when more than 30 million Africans died. And I was just, why shouldn't people have medicines? I attempted, and I got a pushback from the big pharma, over there. And I took a breather. I think about 3 or so years later, some people were fighting the cause to get medicines for Africans, which I didn't know. They were fighting up to WTO level. I was doing my own academic pursuit, but later I became aware that this area is a political science. It's not just science. A lot of politics. But by 2000 or 1999, it became a little easier to even get 5 grams of zidovudine, which was almost impossible to get, because you need a lot of amount if you want to develop medicine in your lab in the university. So, South Africa was most ravaged in Africa. And there was this young boy, Nkosi, who was like skeleton when he was being interviewed by CNN. The parents have died. I think he was the only survivor in his family, but somebody adopted him. He knew he was going to die. And he said on CNN that he wished that people would not discriminate against children, and that it is not the children's fault. Because he was about 12 years. He knew he said he knew that he was going to die, but that he would plead with the world not to discriminate against children. That was what changed me, turned me around, so to say. Not turned me around, but made me to be focused on helping people with HIV/AIDS. At that point, there was no medicine in Nigeria. Your CD4, the CD4 must be less than 200. By that time, it's like treating stage 4 cancer. When the CD4 is less than 200. I started drugs for AIDS and HIV patients. At that point, there were no drugs. It was only drug for opportunistic infections that we were taking to Nigeria. My husband, myself, whenever we are coming, we'll have load packs of opportunistic infections, and also doing awareness in secondary schools, how not to get HIV/AIDS. So we were distributing the drugs for opportunistic infections into different hospitals in Lagos, Oyo, and Osun. That was how drugs for AIDS and HIV/AIDS patients started. Then we started from my lab. I started compounding, not compounding, from my research. Whatever we are making is a dry powder for suspension. We pack them into 60 ounce bottles. Is it 60 ounce? 60 ml bottle, not 60 ounce. A bottle, dry powder, and ship them to Ogbomoso Baptist Hospital, where I started my drugs for AIDS and HIV patients, because that was where we worked from before we left, 1980. Because at that point, when the medicine now is available, when the political part, the trade part has been settled in Geneva, you can now get zidovudine, but again, it is only for limited number of people. And for children, I said, what of children? So they were using mortar and pestle to grind zidovudine in UCH, and I said, they're not going to get accuracy because it is suspension, it may settle and whatnot, they may not be distributed well. That was how I started making the medicine from the US and shipping to Nigeria. We also did a lot of prevention of mother-to-child transmission. We're doing at Ogbomoso Baptist Hospital, we're doing cesarean section. I think we did for like 35 mothers just to save the children from getting infected. But we then had to escalate because we were taking care of the mothers. Most of the men, their husbands were dying faster than the women. So the women, we gather positive action committee. We started in Ogbomoso, and for each woman, you will see 2-3 children following them to this meeting every 2 weeks. And I said that, okay, what is going to happen? Because some of these women, they were labeled as witches, they killed their husbands and whatnot. So things were just tough. So we started Sarah Extended Home for orphans, children orphaned by HIV. So that was how we started our own orphan home in 2002. So we had about 22 children. I think 2 fell out, and we started training them from kindergarten, some of them in kindergarten, some in primary school. Now most of them are in the university. Many of them have finished from the university. Some of them are still waiting, few of them waiting NYSC. About 7 are in the university right now. So we have maybe about 4 or 5 left out of the 20 children that we were taking care of. So that is how the science met the faith. And people thought that, how can you mix science with faith? And I tell them, you don't know the nature of God, because God created everything, including the medicine that we get from leaves and plants and whatnot. And so from my perspective, it is all in one.
Absolutely. Is the initiative still running? Are you still taking care of the drug for HIV? Wow.
Well, drugs for HIV/AIDS, no, we are not bringing drugs from overseas again, but drugs for HIV/AIDS emerged into Sarah Extended Family Home. So we have 2 homes in Ogbomoso and Osogbo, but because the children were going to university, so we collapsed the 2 homes into 1. So we still have one home in Oshogbo because we have some of our children still there.
So when is the last person, how old is the youngest, and what is the plan for when the youngest person leaves?
The youngest, I believe, is in SS, I think SS. So he has maybe one more year or so, but we've been very fortunate to have volunteers. So when the last person leaves, which the last child leaves, which will now be about 4 or 5 years from now, I believe one of the volunteers may take over the mission so that we can continue to help children that are orphaned by HIV/AIDS. But it's no longer children orphaned by HIV/AIDS, it's now children orphans, just orphans, children that don't have parents or have one parent that cannot take care of them.
That's beautiful. I think thank you. This has been an exciting way to start my Saturday morning.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you taking time to speak with me.
So much. Thank you. And it's nice talking with you too. Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your day, man.
Thank you. God bless you.